developing a firm foundation for sound number concept growth. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to heap a number of terms into one basket, the terms being numeracy, number concept, and maths fact fluency. This basket of terms refers broadly to the ability to understand and work with numbers in an age-appropriate or grade-appropriate way. Developing a grade-appropriate number concept requires a gradual, step-by-step approach to teaching one concept upon another concept in a gradual, organized, and systematic way. If a child's number concept or mathematical ability is inadequate for their grade, no amount of force-feeding, drilling of methods, or using old exam papers is going to help the child gain proficiency in maths. In order to help a child advance, the teacher has to determine at what stage the child understood a concept, and then from there start building up. So often we feel that we haven't got the time to go back to basics because of the enormity of the topics that we have to cover via the curriculum. So I'd like to just say from experience, it is much easier to sort out the basic concepts and then one can progress at a grade level rate. But it's worthwhile taking the time getting back to basics. In order to help a child advance, the teacher has to determine at what stage the child was comfortable with working with particular numbers and start building up from there. It saves you so much heartache when you really get to the bottom of what was the basic concept that the learner missed, and then you develop from there until they get to the appropriate grade level. You might find, while at the beginning of this year, with all we've been through in the pandemic, that a lot of back to basics is going to be required. And so bearing that in mind, I want to take a concept like multiplication and show you by drilling down to the most basic concept of how to really remediate and to help learners become proficient in multiplication. Multiplication is the extension of the concept of addition, and addition relies on counting. And so in the very beginning stages, we start counting in numbers, then we start counting in groups of numbers, and then we add those groups of numbers as many times as we need to, and that leads to multiplication. So in the higher grades, when you're having to teach a child to multiply 2 digits by 2 digits, they have to understand why they're doing it and why they're using the method that you're teaching. So if you have the number 23 multiplied by 17, the learner has to understand that you're making a group of 23, and then you're going to make 17 groups of 23, and then you'll arrive at the answer. So let's start with the most basic skip counting. So for example, if I'm about to count in twos, I will start with showing them what a group of 2 looks like. And you'll have one group of 2, and then you'll have 2 groups of 2. Now notice that I'm building up my groups in an array, because later on the learners are going to have to understand all about an array. So now I've got one group of 2, 2 groups of 2, and then I'm just going to show you 3 groups of 2. So how are we going to write these? How's the learner going to learn? So this is going to be, we've got 2 bottle tops, and that is equal to 1 group of 2. Now I've got 4, and that's equal to 2 groups of 2. Here I've got 6, and that's equal to 3 groups of 2. If, for example, you're trying to teach how to multiply 23 by 17, it's no good just telling them how to go about it in showing them a method on the board. The learner has to understand that I've got 23 in one group, and I'm adding on another 23 in another group, and I'm going to carry on adding on until I've got 17 groups of 23. They could do 23 plus 23 10 times, and then they could do 23 plus 23 7 times, and then they could add them up and they would come to the product. It would work best if a child had their own set of concrete bottle tops, stones, sticks to work with. So every single sense is used when trying to understand a concept. The way we teach them higher up is we learn to write a number sentence. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 6. In the next level, we go to writing out a multiplication equation. 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 2 is 6. And so we proceed. In the higher grades, it's not necessary to start with such a simple number. You would start with a number that is more age appropriate. So you might start with the number 13, and you would show them that you've made a group of 13, and then you would have 2 groups of 13. And so the learners will fully understand what multiplication is really all about. There's no topic in mathematics that stands alone. Each topic builds on a previous concept. For example, when you're doing patterns in algebra, if a learner hasn't come to terms with multiples and factorizing, they're going to find factorizing in algebra very difficult in grades 7 and 8. What about in grade 5 and 6, when one needs to simplify a fraction? They might find a numerator of 39 or 51, and they'll think, oh, that's an odd number and it must be prime. But if they have been doing their counting using different numbers, they'll start to recognize, I hit upon that number 39 once. And where did I? What was I counting in? And so they'll be able to simplify their fractions. So it's never too late to get back to basics. And especially after all we've been through in this last year, it's very, very necessary. It saves so much heartache of trying to force feed a grade level topic to a child who has no firm foundation of the underlying concept that they possibly missed in the foundation phase. Counting every day will familiarize learners with numbers, and they'll be able to recognize them as well. Now, when are you going to put all of this into practice? Because there's so much to cover in 1 hour lessons. The first 10 minutes of every maths lesson is supposed to be dedicated to mental maths. I know from experience, those first 10 minutes are gobbled up by admin, taking the register, doing the athletics list. But I'm going to ask you to guard those 10 minutes with your life, because they're so important. It wakes up the children's brains. It's fun. It helps them to anticipate what's coming next. And the best thing about all is that the quieter learner, who seldom offers any answers in class, has an opportunity to think through and to possibly add something to what is being discussed. The key here is to have a really well-planned program. See at what level your learners are, what are their gaps, and devise a program starting there and let it grow. Arrive in the morning with enthusiasm and know what you're doing in that mental maths lesson. You don't need to start with 2s and 3s and 5s. Why not start counting in 25s, in 50s, in 125s? Use numbers that will benefit the learners in other topics. For example, when you're doing measurement, a learner will need to know what half a litre is in milliliters. They'll need to know the number 125. They'll have to know 250 as a quarter of a litre. The other benefit is, if you've been counting in these numbers, they'll also be able to convert their fractions into decimal fractions, because 1/8 they will recognize will go with the number 125, and so they will develop from there. Remember, when you're doing your tables or you're practicing, to make it fun. So use a bit of rhythm, use standing on one leg, or clapping, or clicking fingers. So 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Something like that to engage the whole child. The more senses the child uses when learning, the more that concept is embedded. And of course we know that practice makes perfect. So I really would urge you to guard those 10 minutes of every day and make them worthwhile and work. Good luck.